Okay, everyone, welcome to Disrupting Tech with Impact. My name is Kyle Milks, Director of Startup and Commercial Sales at OpsGuru. And with me is my friend and CEO of Crewdle, Vincent Lamanna. So, of course, we're going to be spending the next 20-25 minutes focusing on disrupting tech with impact. But first, just want to give you some brief introductions and a bit of background behind the partnership behind our two organizations, just to set the table for our time together this afternoon. So, I will mostly be playing second fiddle up here, asking Vincent some questions and guiding the conversation. I'm really looking forward to this fireside chat. Again, I'm with OpsGuru. For those of you that are unfamiliar with OpsGuru, we are an AWS premier partner in the partner ecosystem, focusing on helping customers with various projects and initiatives pertaining to cloud adoption and cloud modernization. We typically have, we have three defined practice areas within OpsGuru. The first one is infrastructure and DevOps. The second is data engineering and analytics. And the third is cloud native development, so think app development and application modernization. As a matter of fact, just 2 weeks ago at the AWS Toronto Summit over at the Convention Center, OpsGuru was awarded AWS Canada's Consulting Partner of the Year. And this certainly speaks volumes to our ability as a professional services organization to help startup, SMB, ISV, and enterprise customers realize the value of AWS Cloud. In addition, we were given this very speaking opportunity at Collision and standing before you on the Startup Loft, and in chatting with our AWS PSM, Anna, over there, reviewing the criteria, she said really it all boils down to pick something that's interesting, be different, and be compelling. So after a brief conversation with her, my mind immediately went to Crewdle and asking Vincent if he would be interested in standing up here today and co-presenting. So OpsGuru and Crewdle, we've been working together for the last 7 or 8 months, and we were immediately impressed with Crewdle, their business model, and Vincent's appetite to disrupt tech with impact, as it really emphasizes one of OpsGuru's core values of making a difference in our community. So from a high level, technically speaking, what we've been working on over the past 7 or 8 months, OpsGuru has helped Crewdle implement an AWS foundation, commonly referred to as a landing zone, just to ensure that they can run secure and scalable workloads in AWS. And more recently, we've designed and implemented a serverless architecture, which will set them up for success for their full migration to AWS next month. With that being said, I'll turn you to the agenda if you don't mind, Vincent. Just in terms of what we'll be going through, welcome and opening remarks. We can check that box, thanks to Barry and myself. I'll turn it over to Vincent momentarily for the Crewdle vision, chat about building tech with purpose, how we can be agents of change, and how we can influence the next generation of technologists. So before I turn it to Vincent, I will leave you with this. The stage at Collision and this very stage on the Startup Loft is a very powerful opportunity. And our goal today and our intention is to leave you with a powerful message, right? We want every member of the audience to leave knowing that they can be change agents within their organizations, whether they work for a 6-person startup or a large organization, and they can certainly be change agents within their communities. With that being said, I'll turn it to Vincent to give a bit of an overview of Crewdle and speak to his vision for the company.
Thank you, Kyle. It's a real pleasure to be sharing the stage with you today. Before I talk about the vision of Crewdle, I'll talk a bit about our journey. So, rewind 3 years ago, January 2020. We still don't know about the pandemic. I'm actually working on building a fintech for impact. So I've been building multiple products, and Kyle saw a frame in my office, which is basically when I worked on NHL 07. And at some point you start realizing, okay, it's great to build products, but can it make a difference in people's life? So that's when I decided to start this fintech, which was making more affordable for homeownership. So for the first time buyer of a new house. Pandemic hit 3 months later. I kind of freak out because the capital becomes pretty rare at that time, and we were not sure what was going to happen. So I decided to shut down that business, and then I was talking with one of my mentors and was asking him, do you think it's going to last for long? And he was like, well, we don't know yet, but one thing's for sure is that the longer it will last, the more there are going to be changes in our society that will become permanent. And one of these changes was remote work. So it started with remote work, but as the pandemic continued and as the pandemic finished, it evolved. It evolved into hybrid work. And so thinking about that, I was like, okay, so what's going to change with hybrid work, with remote work? It's our relationship to data consumption. So we are consuming more data now than we were before the pandemic. And with all the innovations that we have today, it will continue to increase. And as I was thinking about that, I come across an article from Purdue University that was talking about the environmental impact of that increase in data consumption. That's when I had the vision for Crewdle, and it kind of evolved a bit, but our vision is really to envision a future where seamless and high-quality streaming experiences are accessible to all while minimizing the environmental impact. By empowering businesses and individuals with our technology, we drive positive change, transforming the way we connect and collaborate. So, of course, now we have a vision, but it's not enough to talk the talk. We have to walk the walk, right? And so in our approach, we decided, okay, what's the first thing we need to do? Well, the first thing that we thought we had to do was to measure our own impact on the environment as an organization. So we did that first exercise in 2020, and it ended up with, I think it was 1 ton of carbon emissions for the whole organization. And so the next year, I attended Change Now in Paris, which is a big conference about sustainability. And I was talking with people there, and I kind of realized that the 1 ton didn't make sense. So that's when I met with the team at Greenly, which they are basically creating a platform that allows you to import your accounting data and basically categorize all the expenses, and it translates into a much bigger number than what we had at the beginning. So now I feel confident that we're properly measuring our emission, and that's part of our approach to sustainability. The second part, and this is pretty recent, so we're saying we provide a greener service. Okay, that's easy to say, but is it really true? And so as part of that work, one of the things that we've done is we've partnered with the Solar Impulse Foundation, and they provided us with 3 independent experts that came in, look at our numbers, and validate, they certified the impact that we have. So how does it work? Well, we're basically doing a shift in paradigm. So we're going from a server paradigm, so where everyone connects through a server, to a decentralized delivery paradigm. And basically what's different is that we can still actually use server, not in this case, but the protocol that we've built is actually hybrid, which means that we can connect through server, but we can also connect directly. And by doing that, we're able to reduce the amount of energy that's being used to transfer data, but also the amount of carbon emissions and water consumption.
Wonderful, thanks, Vincent. So appreciate you giving us an overview in terms of how you guys are disrupting the status quo. In the theme of building tech with purpose, what is your opinion and beliefs on the level of accountability that other tech companies should have in terms of their environmental impact?
All right, so if we look at some of the apps that we use on a day-to-day basis, I mean, you recognize YouTube here, Facebook, our emails that we send every day, Google search, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of services that we use on a daily basis. These services consume data, they consume energy, and it translates into carbon emissions. If you just look at the emails, for example, we're sending, and that's kind of 2021, so it's probably higher than that now, but 306 billion emails sent daily, sent and received. That translates into 1.2 trillion grams of carbon emissions on a daily basis. It's huge. So our sector, the ICT sector, we need to take our responsibility to make products that are actually better for the environment and that are providing a positive impact. How can you do that? Well, there is a simple approach. It's a small framework, 4 steps, very easy. It's similar to other frameworks that we use in software development. It's an iterative process, right? And so to build product that have impact, it has to be built by design. The same way we do security, for example. If you don't think about security before starting to build a product, there are good chances that your product is not going to be secure. And so the first step is you have to define what purpose your product will serve. How will you make an impact? And from there, you're going to be able to define metrics and put targets on those metrics. The second part, of course, is to measure, right? So we want to make sure that what we've built is actually providing the impact that we thought it would provide. Good chances on the first try, it's not going to be that good, but again, it's an iterative process. So we get to step 3. We assess and evaluate those metrics, right? And we compare them with the targets and we see if the purpose that we wanted to serve is actually good. And last piece is, again, we just repeat those steps again, over and over again, until we reach the impact that we want to get.
Perfect. Thanks, Vincent. So again, in the spirit of being agents of change and doing what we can, is there a quick win or an example that you could share in terms of what someone could be doing tomorrow to achieve a quick win and follow this mindset?
Yeah, actually, you mentioned it at the beginning, but as an organization, we need to empower our employees to become agent of changes. And why is that important? Well, if we look at the energy forecast for the ICT sector, we're actually seeing that it's growing. It's growing quickly. So it will have gone from 4% in 2020 up to 20% in 2030. And when we say energy consumption, I mean, although a lot of people are now turning to renewable sources, there are still sources that are not that good and will translate into carbon emissions. So we need to be careful with how much energy we consume. And how we can do that? Well, the first step is use the cloud. So when you deploy a server on premise, for example, and you underutilize that server, it's going to lead to more energy being consumed because you're going to also have idle time in there. By using the cloud, you can benefit from all the optimization that the cloud providers have done. The second part is to go serverless. I mean, we're pretty good at that. But going serverless brings another layer of optimization because then you're sharing the resources with a bunch of other apps and services. So by doing that, you can actually make sure that the idle time of your resources is minimal, and as such, you're running at the most optimal way you can do. The third part is optimize the response time. So let's think about an API call. So the API call takes 1 second, right? So during that 1 second, there is compute time and all that, so you consume energy. If you start optimizing your code and you reduce it to, let's say, 500 milliseconds, that's a 50% energy reduction. That's huge. Then if you go even further and you reduce it to 25 milliseconds, that's 98% energy reduction for the same workload. So software engineers, you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you optimize your code to make sure that you target the bottom and not the top. And of course, your end users will be happy to have a faster service. Last part, optimizing your content. So let's take 3 photos. They look exactly the same, actually. So depending on the file format that you will choose, this will have an impact on the file size. And the bigger the file size is, well, the more bandwidth and the more data you're going to be consuming when you download this data. So for example, we take the PNG file there, 120 kilobytes, pretty much. Take the WebP lossy file format, 20 kilobytes. So that's 6 times less in terms of the file size. multiply that by 1 million visitors, for example, you can see the scale of the impact you can have by just making sure that you're choosing the right format and optimizing your content.
Wonderful. In terms of empowering the next generation of technologists, Vincent, what can we incorporate in terms of the lessons we've learned to date, 2023, into foundational principles for future generations?
All right, well, this one I think is pretty important. If we look back at history and how we've been driving changes, especially on the environmental side, let's take recycling. It really started with kids in school. They were showing them how to recycle, and then those kids went back home, and then they showed their parents how to recycle. Then in the end, now it's pretty common. Everyone recycle and it's normal. But we actually use the younger generation to drive that change in our society. And I think that in our sector, it's going to come pretty much for the same thing. So we need to make sure that the younger generation, they understand the impact and the challenges that we're facing, and that they know how to work with that. And how we can achieve that? Well, the first thing is making sure that we have mentoring in place in the workplace for that. So having experts in impact or environmental subjects, for example, but then you have to make sure that those people are sharing their knowledge with the other employees. So mentoring is actually a pretty good way to make sure that people understand what they're doing, understand the impact that it can have, and how to positively impact the work that they do. The second thing, and I think this one is really the most important, I don't think it's normal that in our universities and colleges, we're actually not teaching this today. So it is going to be one of the biggest challenges that we have in the coming years. We have to make sure that the students that are coming out of school, they actually know about how to drive positive impact. And the last part, online courses, online resources, that's how I train myself on this subject. There are a bunch of things available out there. People have to be curious. They have to consume that content, even though it translates into carbon emissions. It's still a good content to consume.
Very good. So transitioning slightly to more of a go-to-market type of strategy conversation, Vincent, what is your thoughts and feelings, and what is the go-to-market strategy around trying to be an enterprise disruptor? There's obviously a lot of incumbent enterprise companies in the space. Are you tackling them head-on and competing, or is it more of a partnership type of model?
So it's a pretty good question. So we started with the first one. So we were going head-to-head, trying to compete. The reality is, if we want to be successful at driving impact, we have to work in partnerships. So whether it's startups, working with enterprise, working with schools, working with NPOs, working with environmental groups, for example, and making sure that we all work together towards the same goal. And by doing that, I think it's one of the only way we are going to be successful in attacking the environmental aspect of our digital sector.